Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another devlog about my forest factory builder lumber mill. I've got a huge new addition to the game to talk about this week, the island map. Before we get into that though, I'd like to thank Core for sponsoring this video. Core is an awesome new game development platform. More about that later in the video. Right, so last time I showed you guys an island concept I drew. The first thing to make islands a reality in the game though is a map. I started by looking around for a perlin noise generator plugin for my pixel art software. Eventually found one on GitHub and got that added to Sprite. I messed around a little with it, just trying to figure out a style I liked, before getting a nice little archipelago generated in the center of the screen. While you watch me add details here, I'll just explain a little about what this is all about. Procedurally generated islands form the basis of the new land ownership system. Each island will have a new coastline to explore, different native tree species, and therefore different opportunities for factory building. At the start of a new game, you'll have limited cash to buy your first island and build your first mill. Over time, you'll earn more money and gain opportunities to buy up new islands to expand your lumber empire. There will be simulated companies also trying to buy up land in the archipelago. Your goal is to beat them to buying up the land you want to ultimately control the largest business in the archipelago. If you have any ideas for objects, species, structures, or anything else you might find on different islands, let me know in the comments. I've tried to make the map look old-fashioned for this design while still keeping true to the game's colour scheme. I then spent a bit of time drawing a setting for the map. I think it would look cool hung on a wall like I've got here. But that's still open to changing if there's a better idea out there. I'm still thinking about that. So with the mock-up drawn, it was time to get to work actually coding the map. I created a scene for the map to reside in Unity before setting up a canvas upon which the map will be drawn. In order for everything to work, I also needed a script for managing the map scene, and another for actually generating maps. The generator just needs to know what resolution to generate the pixel art at, and the image object where the map texture will go. I just had it generating some basic perlin noise to start off, pressed play, and nothing happened. Turned out I'd made a pretty typical mistake of not actually applying the changed pixels to the map texture. I added a generate button while I was at it, just to make generating new maps easy during testing. At that point I got some basic perlin noise being drawn to a texture. I added a filter to the noise to highlight peaks in black and troughs in white, all in a circular area in the center of the screen, which looked like this. It looked okay, but the islands were very spaced out, small, and not really ideal shapes for gameplay. I needed more control over the generation process, so I decided to make the generator select square plots for islands of specific sizes, then raise the perlin noise in those areas, and lower it everywhere else. The first attempt at that looked like this, before I fixed that bug, and it worked pretty nicely. I now have control over the size of islands, how many islands of each size there are, and a few other things like water level. Now, this is just an image at the moment. I need islands to be identified so they can be passed to the forest generator. I got the game identifying the coordinates of each pixel for each island, which was made simple by the fact I already knew what plots the islands occupy. About midway through development of this feature, I ended up going back to Sheffield where I went to university to collect all the stuff I left behind after abruptly moving out. It was kind of weird seeing campus so empty and leaving uni behind this way, but I'm glad I've got my PS4 back. I also ended up participating in the GMTK Game Jam, making a game called Living Labyrinth, which was a fun opportunity to take a break from Lumbermill for the weekend. So, safely reunited with my stuff, I returned to work, this time generating outlines for the islands. The generator just draws a circle at each coastal pixel for each layer of the outline, which creates this shallows effect. I then added slight cliffs to each island by drawing a grey pixel under each land pixel with water underneath it. The result at that point looked like this. Already pretty pleased with it, especially as it's entirely procedural. Going back to the original design, the map also needs a grid overlay and a dashed border. The grid can be created pretty easily with code, and I made it generate as a separate image to the map just to make things easier to edit. I can control the spacing of the grid with this option. With the grid overlaid, it all looked like this. So finally, I just needed to create the border. I drew that in Sprite this time, as it was way more time efficient to do that than program it. At first, I tried it as a tiling image or 9 slice. When I set that up in Unity and tested it though, it didn't look quite right. I couldn't get the pixels to line up correctly and the scale was all off. I instead drew a full-size border to just slap on top of the map, which looked much better. At that point, everything looked as I wanted it, and the islands were being identified. The player needed to be able to select an island to actually buy it and play on it though. So that was the next problem that needed solving. Before I get to that though, in order to help cover some of my development costs, this video is sponsored by Core. Core is a brand new, completely free game creation platform. It's built on top of the Unreal Engine and supports everything from building and publishing to playing other people's creations. Coding in Lua is supported but optional, so whether you have plenty of coding experience or none at all, this is an incredibly powerful set of tools which allows you to get started actually making games. It's got loads of music, sound and art assets which you can customize to your liking from a huge range of materials to create some truly stunning and varied environments. When you create a new project, you can start completely from scratch, select from a range of templates, or even remix and explore other people's worlds. The creators host frequent community events to get involved with, including the current Secret Spaces Game Jam with a huge prize pool of $3,500. It's super easy to get started, and if you follow my link in the description, you can download Core and get started making games. So, to let players actually choose islands, there are a few options. Adding a bunch of buttons to the map, which seems a bit imprecise, or track the mouse so we know what pixel it's currently pointing at. I went for that option, creating a map mouse tracker script to start off. The first step was to calculate how many screen pixels each pixel of the map occupies based on its size. The calculations all seemed correct in the console, so I added a text box to the screen to display the current coordinate. That worked for maps that filled the entire screen, but when the map is resized, it can mess things up. It turns out there's an amazing class in Unity called Rect Transform Utility, which has features designed for solving exactly this problem. With that, the calculations worked, so I added more text to the screen to check whether the current pixel is part of an island. If it is, the text says true, and if not, it says false. The last step was just making the entire map one big button, so when it's clicked, the current island is selected. I made some changes to the forest generator to take the island shape as input, and this is where we'll pick up from in the next devlog. The map is no longer a floating diamond, but a floating island with a varied border. I think you'll probably know what needs adding next. The game is available for wishlisting on Steam. Every wishlist I get really helps out, as it means the game will get more exposure on release, and you'll get notified when the game comes out. The link to wishlist is in the description. Special thanks for this video go to my patrons, and in particular I'd like to thank Alex, Nico, Ekapivol, Sheshpesh, Pepe BNT, Pepper Trollman, Ethan Hart, Julian, Nova, Gecko, Cameron W, Hayden, Mr. Smith, Joshua, Chris Naismith, Logan, BD Smith, Warner M14 and Andrew. That's all for this video. If you liked it, do consider subscribing, and I shall see you next time. Cheers for watching.